Just a
couple seconds, which will it start, but you can start in 3 seconds.
Okay.
Or now.
Okay, hello and good afternoon to everybody joining us from Hungary and from abroad. Welcome to the virtual studio of Inside Art, the art industry conference organized by Art Market Budapest, Central and Eastern Europe's contemporary art fair, leading contemporary art fair, I wanted to say. Due to the pandemic situation this year, we chose to go online with Inside Art, and this conversation will be our very first program. My name is Krisztina LÖBL, and I will be your host today. Actually, we have just opened Art Market Budapest a couple of hours ago, physically, in person, which is a very rare thing nowadays, I guess. So I think art fairs as a topic is just right to start our conference with. We will be discussing the art fair success story, and we will also try to forecast the future. I'm really excited to introduce our excellent panelists, our guests, who are here with us from all over the world. Please welcome Georgina, who is, among others, editor-at-large at the Art newspaper and contributor to the Financial Times and member of the International Associates of Art Critics. Carlos URROZ, executive director of TBA 21, Thyssen-Bornemisza Art Contemporary, who is a former director of Arco Madrid Art Fair as well. Mandla SIBEKO, who is an entrepreneur, businessman, and founder of F&B Art Joburg, Africa's first art fair. Juan, an independent curator, writer, and artistic director of ZONAMACO, the biggest art fair in Mexico. And last but not least, Attila LEDENYI, founding director of Art Market Budapest. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking your time and joining us today. Hi.
Hello.
Before we start, there's a quick technical information to our audience regarding Q&A. If you would like to ask any questions to the panelists, please type it in the Q&A section of the Zoom down there in the menu bar. And in the remaining time at the end of the conversation, I will read them out to the panelists and try to answer them. Thank you so much. Well, we don't have too much time, 60 minutes to be precise, but first of all, I would like just to make a quick round. What is the situation you are in now? How did the pandemic affect you? What are you doing at the moment? Because you're all over the world, and I think it's very exciting for our audience as well. Please, Carlos, tell us what you're into now and what is the situation in Madrid?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to this Zoom webinar. I was telling Attila, I have wonderful memories of being in Art Budapest 2 years ago when I was still director of art of the art fair. And that gave me also an opportunity to get to know the Hungarian art landscape. And right now I'm working for Thyssen-Bornemisza Art Contemporary. We have an ongoing program at the Thyssen Museum in Madrid. We do 2 exhibitions a year of contemporary art related to social and environmental issues. And due to the pandemic, that was our program shifted. We have to postpone some exhibitions, and we created a new platform called a Stage for the streaming age in order to be able to host some of our commitments with the artist in another format, in a digital format. And that's something that we had launched a month ago, and that we were so excited with the response of the artists that we did a small show at the Thyssen Museum of these digital works, but also with some installations and sculptures related by the same artist, which opened to the public 3 weeks ago without an opening, which is very, very difficult, you know, because we're used to all these gatherings and getting together. So it's another format. It's more one-to-one. We're doing very small visits, reduced to 8 persons, with people that are interesting. Said so because of the situation in Spain, in Madrid right now, which has a perimeter closed and you're not allowed to go out or to go get into the city. We had a reasonable amount of visitors during the weekend, this weekend. So, I think people interested in culture will still go to museums, will still go to galleries. But of course, this international gathering has been restricted a lot due to the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Georgina. You are in London right now.
I'm in London. That's right. So So London is actually in what's called tier 2. So there's a restriction on public meetings. You're supposed not to be more than 6 people in a gathering. Some parts of the north have got more severe regulation. Our figures aren't good. The number of new infections is going up and the number of deaths, sadly, has gone up, although it's not as high as it was at the beginning of the pandemic. So that's the situation here. For me personally, I am currently writing a 3rd book, and I was actually booked with everything organized to go to China in February. So that was a research trip. It was going to be China and Australia. So of course that didn't happen. Fortunately, I didn't go because I might still be there locked up somewhere. Thank heavens I didn't go. And I'm still working on the book. It's obviously my research trips have been completely curtailed, and I don't know when I'll be able to travel again. I haven't traveled really this year, and this is a huge change because I used to go to so many different art fairs. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the other panelists have to say in this webinar, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Okay, hi Mandla. What about South Africa? Can you unmute yourself?
I'll do that. Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
so,
thank you so much. It's wonderful to connect with colleagues whom I have not met, but I definitely know quite a lot about your work, and I've been dying to get to your fairs. There's just never enough time. So I was hoping that maybe I would have landed up in one of your fairs this year, or, well, let's plan for the future, I guess. Yeah, in South Africa, we entered pretty much lockdown 6 months ago. So 6 months ago, we were not able to move anywhere around. And that was really the beginning of March. March the 27th is when the president said, look, the country must shut down. So, it has had an impact in the sense that, the galleries were closed for a long time, at least for 3 months. People were not able to visit galleries. But also the very few museums that do exist also closed down. In fact, one of them just only opened now for the first time. So the impact has been quite severe. As you know, from this part of the world, South Africa contributes quite significantly to sort of carrying the flag for the rest of the continent. If you look at the number of artists that are represented by the very few South African galleries, they reflect really the continent. They take the best of the artists that come from the continent. They already sit with galleries in South Africa quite a long time ago. So that has had a severe impact on galleries, because typically as a small gallery out of 15 galleries, I would say out of 7, half of them, by the time they come to the fair, which is in September, they would have at least done 9 to 10 shows around the world, and that has not happened. So from an income perspective, it's not really great. They're under a lot of pressure in terms of revenue. And then obviously from ourselves, we had planned to go and we relaunched the fair. The fair was quite a bigger fair in the last sort of 9 years. We've been around for 13 years, and we relaunched and rebranded last year to become much smaller so that we could focus on the quality, that you could find the best of the best at our fair. So unfortunately, just as we relaunched last year, we're not actually able to have a follow-up edition. So we have actually gone online because the country's still in lockdown. We are now at level 1, but pretty much the restaurants and everything else is open. But South Africa has followed a very strict, sort of stringent protocol around COVID from the beginning, which has really helped to kind of manage the crisis, because it could have been worse in this part of the world, and our health system could have literally collapsed overnight, and it hasn't, due to the restrictions that were put into place. So we're pretty much still working at home, and in 2 weeks' time we go live for the first time. I never thought we would be, doing anything like that. And also the uptake in technology in South Africa has been a bit behind because of trust. So the e-commerce platforms in the country have not really taken off. So the good news is that from an e-commerce platform, we've seen quite a big jump very quickly in the 6 months. But we hope that we'll return to physicality, and we are doing smaller events, obviously around the fair, and hoping to follow up after.
Thank you. As I mentioned in the introduction, that we have just opened practically a couple of hours ago, Art Market Budapest. So Attila, could you tell us a little more about, to our audience, that what is happening in Budapest and especially at the location of the fair?
Sure. The Budapest, I wouldn't say was unheard, but Budapest came out relatively well from the first wave of the pandemic. When the lockdown started back in March, our reaction to that was that we decided to entirely focus on preparations for October, which is when the original date of Art Market Budapest 2020 was going to be, which is what we kept. Partly because the October seemed far enough for us to feel safer, but also we decided that the position we had to take was that Art Market Budapest traditionally plays, as most art fairs, plays such an important role in bringing art and audience together, that we feel responsible, to be able to serve that kind of service to our public and to the art community. So we never had we never gave up the hope that we're going to be able to bring it all together. Currently, it's not looking particularly good in Budapest in terms of the number of cases and casualties, but still there is no lockdown. And what we just had the preview yesterday, and what we were experiencing is that our thoughts and our endeavors were correct, because people happily came. People had been looking forward to being able to get together again, interestingly, we ended up with around 20 countries represented. So in spite of all the difficulties, it seems that there's trust towards us, and that is a trust we have to serve well. So we have exhibitors here from 20 countries. So we play an important role, and we take the responsibility, and we try to help with all our fellow art fairs and other colleagues who we can, to promote theirs, to provide a platform for them to be able to survive or come out successfully from this particular difficult situation.
Yeah, thank you. Juan, how about Mexico City? How about ZONAMACO? If I get it right, you postponed. You didn't go online. What about you and Claire?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with all of you. Yeah, the situation, I mean, Mexico has been one of the countries that has been affected by the virus in a huge way. Now the situation is, in the city, you have some parts of the city more open, some others are closed. Some museums are open, some museums are closed. The galleries are open, most of them. They opened some weeks ago. And for us, yeah, the fair was in February. We decided to postpone because February was a very risky, of course, date. So we moved to the spring, April 28, May 2. We believe, as Attila was saying, that the experience of being in the art fair and the experience and all the social rituals that happen between or in the encounter between the artwork and the public and the collector or the professionals is something that is very important for the context. It's very important for us, and of course you can substitute that with an online version. So we are trying to understand how we can go ahead with the art fair in these circumstances. How we can adapt the format to the present, to this present that we are living. No? Of course, we have to change many things because if one format is affected by the pandemic, is the art fair, because it's about traveling, it's about moving, it's about a lot of people in the same place, it's about being together. So there are many things that we have to think, and we have to imagine new dynamics, new ways of being together, new. But for us, it's this word about responsibility. No? It's our responsibility to find a way of how the fair can happen in these circumstances, because we don't know when we will be able to be together in the same way that we used to. No, so we should, and we can't just stop. So we should find a way of going ahead in these circumstances. So we are working in different lines. Of course, the fair will be smaller, which will allow us also to take care of things in a different way. And we are really working in how we can give some security to the people who want to travel to Mexico, what kind of security we can give them, how can we arrive to the people that don't want to travel. And here you can work with the online tools that we have, as this meeting, for example. No? Flexibility is something that I think is very important also. We are trying to be more flexible for the galleries when they come into the fair and they prepare their booths. We are also promoting many collaborations, that gallery can collaborate together. 2, 3, 4 galleries can come together in a booth, like trying to rethink many aspects of the fair and trying to adapt them to the actual circumstances. No? And we hope that the new dates works, and if not, because also it's something that you must have in mind, because we don't know what will happen, right? So if we can't do it in these dates, we will find another date in this year, and our will is to do the fair one fair presence and with a strong online format this year.
Okay.
And also, I think a very important aspect that we are seeing that is that has huge importance today is communication. How we communicate things to the galleries, and how we make still more strong this confidence between the fair and the galleries.
Thank you. Thanks, Juan. So let's jump right into our topic, art fairs, the success story. Actually, the oldest art fairs, Art Cologne and Art Basel, opened their gates in the late 60s. Art Basel then started with around 100 galleries, exhibitors, figures numbered in just 2 years. And today they operate 3 fairs in Basel, in Miami, and Hong Kong, presenting approximately 800 exhibitors yearly. And Art Basel Group is just one, yet very significant actor of the art market. And today, well, before Corona at least, there are more than 300 art fairs or biennials happening on a daily basis practically. You would at least have to have 10 lives to be able to visit them all. Why do you think has this format become so popular in the last 4 decades of selling art? And I would like to ask Georgina first, because she's absolutely not an art fair director, so she's very independent in that matter. So what is your opinion about that? Why?
Firstly, I'd like to say, just one thing I'd like to say is that we have to remember that when these art fairs started, that was back before the globalization of the whole art world. Russia was not a player, India wasn't a player, China wasn't a player. So the context was very different. Why have art fairs been so successful? It's a number of reasons. I mean, one of them is the very attractive one-stop shop aspect. You can go and you can see, if you're interested in a certain artist, you might see it in a number of different booths. You can see lots of different galleries all in the one space. So it's a very efficient way of looking at art. And of course, we live in a much more eventimental world. You know, events are important. People like going to events. Mm-hmm. It's been a way for dealers to have an international presence without actually having an outlet or a gallery in another place, but they can go. And it has to be said that before the pandemic, the lifestyle was attractive. You went to the fair, there were interesting conversations, there were parties, there was a feeling that you were meeting people in the art world. So there were lots of reasons why art fairs became really popular.
Okay, what do you think, Carlos? You ran Arco Madrid for a very long time. What are your views on this? Why is it so successful, this form of art sales?
I completely agree with Georgina. I think when these art fairs were created, or Arco was created, or MACO was created, those art fairs created also a community, within the local galleries, links with foreign galleries, and that was very, very important. On the other hand, it also created wealth for the cities. Suddenly people came to Madrid, people came to Mexico, or to Bogota, or to Johannesburg. So I think that made that also the cities, the local authorities, to support the art fairs, so that this community became bigger and more important, more visible, and went outside the art world itself. Because when these art fairs started, Cologne Art Fair was very restricted to collectors, artists, and dealers, and said so. All this evolution became into such a successful model that Arco got to have more than 150,000 visitors, and that was suddenly these communities became so large that they started to close themselves and become more restricted with private days. And I think that is one of the dangers of the art fairs, this exclusiveness, going back to being only for few, and get away from the artists. Sometimes you feel artists don't feel welcome at the art fairs. And so I think it has changed a lot in these 40 years, from being a art community place to being more a social gathering. And I think it's something with art fairs, and I think also the people that go to art fairs, we have to rethink about, definitely.
Yeah. What do you think? How many art fairs can the market ideally tolerate? Because there's a lot of art fairs right now, and there's an expression, actually, this art fair fatigue. Then you're really tired of going to all these booths and seeing everything, but you have the drive and you really want to see everything. And which part of the world is fair overloaded and very still worth investing into new fairs? And I'm asking Mandla because I think I'm guessing Africa might be a place where there's still place for art fairs. What do you think about that? Mandla, can you? Oh,
okay. I think you've yes. Yeah. I think you've asked such a brilliant question. Ooh, my internet is so unstable. Okay, fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So, obviously there's this interest at the moment on African art. But, I've been saying that realistically, it's been almost overhyped in the sense that you do have 54 nations on the continent. But of those 54 nations on the continent, really, how many of them are producing art to that level that can be exhibited to compete at that level globally? Not all the 54 nations can say that, because we still have a lot of catching up to do on the continent. But there are other countries that are quite advanced, like South Africa as an example, or Nigeria. But South Africa has the beauty of having inherited an infrastructure that came with the apartheid system, where Black people and white people were segregated, in the country. So it's actually only 27 years ago. So with that, the advantage is that you inherited a system of a bit of a strong gallery system that the rest of the continent, other nations do not have. So there is still so much potential on the continent to there are not enough art schools. They definitely, if you went beyond maybe 6 or 7 nations, people wouldn't even know what an art fair is. They'll ask you, what are you talking about? They might confuse it and think an art fair is a gallery or an art fair is a museum. So So those are the dynamics I think the continent is grappling with. Yet at the same time, there are amazing artists that have come from this continent. If you look at Ethiopia, they've had art schools during the time of Haile Selassie. And if you look at the DRC of Congo, they might be unstable at the moment, but there are artists who've been making amazing work, even in those conditions. So with us here, we've had to resize. We were the first to go to market, to build an art fair on the continent. And then we realized that we needed to make sure that we, our artists were starting to gain the momentum that is really great. I mean, one of the artists who actually won an art prize for my fair is now being selected by David Zwirner in London, as an example. And then there are a couple of others who are in the top 5 galleries in the world, and they're museums, at the Tate, you name it all. Quite a lot of the things that were not happening 10 years ago are starting to happen. So I do think that given where we are, we've had to cut, sort of really be fit for purpose. When I traveled to Brazil, I got to understand the size of that fair market. And I was like looking at it and saying, how do we sustain ourselves so that we don't land up creating confusion, so that when people like yourselves come to our country to see African contemporary art, they don't land up seeing half of it being like flea market quality, and then the other half is like, at the level of, anywhere else in the world. So we had to make sure that we start to treat our artists with that level of respect and dignity. So it was really in line with making sure that we become sustainable versus us being concerned with trying to be everything. But the other thing has been that in this part of the market, an art fair is an educational tool because we don't have enough museums. So there's a lot of people who come through and get educated. When I first walked into an art fair, I know the rest of my colleagues around the world will probably think I'm crazy, but South Africa's only really gotten its freedom really 27 years ago. Before then, you could not find a Black person or someone of my skin color being orientated in the art world. It sounds crazy, but it's the truth. So, with the changes that have come with democracy in South Africa, it has really meant that, more and more Black artists have received the prominence that they should have. But also it has really given a sense, with an art fair, it's really been quite a good soft landing for a lot of Black middle class who were actually left out of the system before 1994. So for us, an art fair has contributed a very different dynamic to anywhere else in the world. Yes, it is a place where people meet, but it's also where people do, there's also cultural exchange. And in South Africa, when you come into our fair, this is the one place where you look at the sort of kind of the aspirations of people like Nelson Mandela, who were saying South Africans should be united in Black and whites. And that's where you get to see that the creative industry really working together in South Africa. So, in South Africa, it plays a different role. Obviously, there is, there is a buying market that has been supporting the art industry. It's not that big, but we're also now thinking long-term to saying that we need to develop this culture so that it's not just something that is looked upon by Africans or South Africans who live here and think that's just a European thing or an American thing. It is their culture. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you think, what do the top art fairs have in common? What are the deciding factors of becoming prosperous? Attila, what do you think about that?
I'm not getting the best questions. This is the. But I'll take the lead and refer back to the previous questions. No problem at all. Well, what they do have in common is that as we all know, that there is a kind of a distinction between global fairs and what is usually called regional fairs. And when it comes to global affairs, it's always very important that the location is not just an artistic cultural center, but it usually is, and it has to be, a financial and economic center as well globally. Global fairs can only succeed at places where there is a tradition of business to go to. This is why New York, London, Hong Kong is leading in that sense. This is what I see. This is what I see they have in common. Interestingly, the number of fairs that are considered global hasn't really changed over the past decades or ever since art fairs started to exist. But it's the regional or the smaller size fairs where there has been a mushrooming of art fairs. And referring back to the question about how many fairs should or should not be in the world, I think the answer is very simple. It's there should and there will always be as many art fairs as the market is going to be able to cope with, and the market is going to decide. It can be 300, it can be 50, it can be 1,000. Where there's a demand and where there's a need and where there's an openness to exhibit at art fairs and to go to art fairs to buy and enjoy art, I really have no problem having 300 or 500 as long as they survive. So if there's no place in the market, they're not going to survive. Things might change. Things obviously changed this year, and we'll see how much these changes are going to stay with us in the years to come. But that's an answer to some of the questions.
Okay. No, actually, we agreed in the beginning that anybody can answer all the questions. It's a little more difficult online. So if you just want to add something, just raise your hands, as in school or something, so that I can see that somebody else wants to add something to the same question. So Carlos, please.
Cool.
Just unmute yourself, please, Carlos, because we can't hear you.
I think Georgina also raised her hand. And I think I love this issue about global and regional fairs that Attila brought up. I think that it's going to be better for regional fairs than for global art fairs. And in that sense, I think that after a lot of traveling and this art fair fatigue, when you go to a place and you see something different, might be shocking at the beginning, or you're not used, to African art or Latin American art, but at the end, you see, at least I see something new. You probably have to sleep it over, but going, crossing the ocean to go to another continent and see exactly the same walls, the same artists, the same names, the same painting sometimes. I think that was part of the fatigue. So this idea of global and regional fairs, also because regional fairs create this sense of community. People will support the fair in Johannesburg or in Colombia but I don't know if local communities will fund or will help the Basel Art Fair, or I don't know. I have lots of questions about it. And I think it's a moment for regional fairs to link to the community, as I said, and to create an art community that really makes sense and makes it viable, not only economically, as Attila was saying, but also to give a sense to the fact of the existence of an art fair.
Yeah, true. Juan?
Oh, it was Georgina first, I think.
No, go ahead, Jan. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just to add something about this issue related to the regional and the global. For us, I think this next edition, we see that we should focus more intensely in the region. In Mexico, in the region, in Latin America, ZONAMACO has been always a fair very focused and important in Latin America, but I think this next edition should still be more aware of that. And we should look at what we have close, and we should keep creating this community that Carlos was speaking around the fair. So we are really working in collaborations with of course, with the local galleries, with the galleries of the region, but also with the institutions, with different projects. So I really believe that the regional art fairs will have this. I think they will have sense now in these moments, and I don't know what will happen with these more global big art fairs, no? And but at the same time, it's of course you have to focus in this region and in the regional, in your artists, in your galleries, but you still have to connect this place with the global, because it's also one of the important aspects of the art fair, no? And it's that what an art fair brings also to the city, all these international people coming here and seeing what is happening. So you have to be very you have to focus really in the regional, in maybe in the contents, in the topics you are speaking, in the artists you are showing, in the art you are providing, but at the same time you have to connect this with the rest of the world, no? So I think here is where we have one of the challenges nowadays, how we become still more aware of our regions, and at the same time we are able to connect with each other, no?
Right. Georgina, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I think there were a couple of things I wanted to say. You know that I think that the pandemic obviously has accelerated to an enormous degree a trend that was already happening, which was that there was a consolidation, and there was actually, I think we had reached the peak of art fairs before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the things that I think is going to be problematic in that trend is the fact that I think the pandemic will be disastrous for smaller and medium-sized galleries, and those are the clients of the art fairs. Apart from that, I totally agree with Carlos and Juan, is that art fairs will become more regional, more local, and this is good for artists, good for collectors. And I do think that people will not go back to, we've all discovered that you don't have to go everywhere all the time, you can do it on Zoom. And I think that even when post-pandemic, fairs are not going to be the same. There will be a sort of hybrid form to them. Parts of them will be online. We'll never go back to the model of the art fair that existed before.
Yeah, exactly. I guess we have to talk about some negative things as well, but I just put it here because we don't want to end the whole conversations with this stuff. About the economic crisis we are approaching, or we are set to be approaching. Some sources, like the IMF itself, forecasts a global economic recession. There are pessimistic and more optimistic versions, of course, but figures suggest that this might be similar to what the world and the art world itself, of course, had to tackle with in 2008. What are your visions about that? Are there any signs of it in the art world? Do you experience it? Attila, what do you think?
Well, the Art Market Budapest was launched pretty much in the deepest part of the 28 crisis, and and what we learned back then is that there's always a way out. You know, we're born optimists. But what we also learned is that those who can survive and those who can be creative in such critical situations are going to be the ones who will succeed in the longer term. It's going to be a test, and I totally agree with Georgina that many of our clients are going to suffer badly, and currently what we have to do is try to make sure that we can ease their pains or make it easier for them to be able to participate at our fairs, or to be able to stay alive and stay part of our community, and because I think the audience is always going to be there. Local, regional, or global. I'm sure that this is the kind of platform that will always attract the audience, and this is what we physically feel in these days. That there's so much hunger and thirst that for physical enjoyment of art and culture, that we're not going to lose the audience. But on the other side, we might lose many of our clients and many of the galleries that guarantee the high level that our audiences are used to. that really is a key issue. But as I said, you know, I see the galleries who are here with us. You know, they've been in a very difficult situation for over half a year now, and it seems that the answers they've been giving to the crisis has been successful in the way that they can be here with us. And they can continue their work. Obviously, if the crisis is going to take longer, the risks are going to be higher. But as I said, you know, with the kind of support that we can provide, we may be able to keep a majority of them on the market, to be able to continue to further serve, you know, their work. So I'm optimistic. Is obviously the challenges are going to be there. We have to be creative about it. We have to find tools that will temporarily, you know, keep us in front of our audiences. But I think even if we would change to some extent in our formats, and we'll go hybrid a little more than we were before, I think as a format, it will survive, because it will have to survive, because and this is what we experienced over the past couple of months, that no matter how good you are virtually, you know, these people are clients or communities. They need to be able to meet with each other and stay in touch in an in-person way. So that's the way we see it, and that's the way we are currently experiencing it as we talk.
Right, Mandla, you're actually the owner of Art Joburg, so I think it's very personal for you. How do you prepare for this so-called recession we are going to face, if we are going to face it? Do you have any personal hints, or do you have any plans?
Obviously, at a personal level, it's been quite emotionally draining. Having mentioned that I did the purchase actually 100% of the fair last year, invested so much resources as well, because a lot of people forget what goes behind the fair, that there's actually money. It's a business. Yeah. And just when we thought we're getting ready for year 2, the year in which we can introduce our product even better, because last year we had to do it so quickly, we were not able to do it. So on my side, it's been quite, quite an interesting time, because it's allowed me to really engage a lot more with the galleries during this time, seeing, just following their roster around the world. But I've been quite humbled that international sort of art fairs have also made calls for the first time, which was quite interesting. When they were going through their own realignment of dates, they were like, oh, we realize that we're now moving, like American fairs are now moving to September, October. And they know that this is the year, this is the time in which the South African galleries are in South Africa. So it was quite nice that they made the call to saying, oh, you know, we just want to make sure that we don't stamp on you, which was also quite a challenge, because, you know, they do need to go to international fairs, but also with all due respect, we still hold a regional fair. So, so that's the challenge that had come through. But from a financial perspective, I do think that it's been the right decision to resize the fair. In a way, I would like to agree with Georgina that we had already started this work, because I think if we were looking at ourselves 3 years back, the old fair, I don't know how we would survive into the future. So this model is the right model. And also, we've had collectors that have come from abroad into South Africa, and we've traveled a long way. You know, to get to South Africa, we're really at the bottom of the continent. It is a long way. And who have just been inspired by having spent time in this market where they can go into the fair 3 times during the time when it's opened, go to studios, engage with the artists in the city, you know, beautifully, and really get to know and understand and be educated about this market versus being in a very big fair in Europe where the very same players exhibit. But some of the feedback that I've also received is that where South African or African galleries have participated abroad during especially this time, there haven't really been many sales that have taken place, which again, I think alludes to what the colleagues have said today, that you know, the regional fairs will play quite an important role. But one of the things that I've had to do was to look into the future. So the platform that we're launching, I'm hoping that the online platform will become available anyway next year so that we can connect the dots with the international anyway, you know, physically. So, I mean, online whilst at the same time having a physical.
Nem tudom.
So,
Csinálják a géppel, hogy halljam, amit az ember beszél. Valaki jöjjön ide és segítsen, ennyi. Köszönjük.
Okay. Anyway. So,
thanks, Attila, for your conversation.
now he just wanted to, you know, add something in Hungarian. Okay, Juan, Georgina, Carlos, do you have any other thoughts on this financial crisis and the positive resolutions, maybe?
I think everyone's for positive resolutions. Unfortunately, the problem is that we don't know how long it's going to last, and this makes planning terribly difficult.
Yes.
At the end of this month here in England, the furlough system will come to an end, in which there's been government support for employment. And although there is a run-on government support, I don't think it'll affect the art world as much. It's tending to affect, for example, restaurants and bars that have had to close down again. I have to say I'm quite pessimistic about the coming year as far as the arts world. The other big problem that we have here in London is and indeed worldwide, is museums, where it's dramatic because they were closed down. Now they have had to put expensive measures in when they reopened, and they've got perhaps 20% of the visitors, and of course no foreign tourists. So I wish I could be more cheerful, but unfortunately I can't be optimistic from the economic point of view.
Mm-hmm. Juan, Carlos?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult time. We don't know, as Georgina was saying, we don't know how much this situation will stay with us. When you speak with galleries, a lot of them, they are suffering and they are having hard times. So I think from our side, from the art fairs, we should be inventive and imaginative to see how we can support them and we with them in these times. No? Of course, the situation is difficult because at the same time that they are suffering because the world stopped. They have been not having exhibitions, no sales, nothing. No, so how can we reactivate this in these times? Of course, the global situation, the financial global situation, it's terrible and will be terrible for a time. But still, there are ways to facilitate some things and be besides the galleries to try to be or survive these difficult times, no? And from our side, we're trying to think in different solutions that we can give now to them to support them and be able to go together with this. No?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And I think this is the time, not only art fairs, galleries, but everybody participating in this work have to be very creative and find new innovative solutions. Well, this is the topic I want to bring up now, about the future of art fairs and this topic of going online. Attila, are you with us? Can you hear us? Because he just mentioned he lost our voice.
Frozen. But I
Yeah? Attila, can you hear us? Anyway, Carlos, please share
I
your.
want to make a comment on, I completely agree with Georgina and in not being optimistic, let's say.
Yeah.
And also the situation that the art institutions, the artists are gonna go through. So I think Art First should be a moment also of recovery, you know, with these inventive ideas that I'm mentioning. So that means completely changing the whole concept of Art First from this very exclusive, expensive format to something funded, you know, publicly funded, where you can create, you know, these links with artists, with curators, again, in a physical and a virtual way. I don't know. We have to be inventive, you know. As I mentioned beforehand, we have created an online platform in order not to break our commitment with artists, because we had things planned for 2020 in the museum, in other venues, and say, okay, we cannot call the artists and say, we're canceling too, you know, because the artists are desperate. So, you know, it's small drops that keep this, their activity open, you know, they have visibility, they receive, of course, a fee. So, you know, we have to think of things. Said so, I think also there was other issues besides the economic factors which are important, and for instance the environmental factor and the carbon footprint of the whole artwork. You know, I think it's something that you know, it was rising in the past years. When I started as an art fair director, I wasn't aware of the amount of carpet wood that was left behind, and when I left 2 years ago, I was already thinking about it. So I think there are other issues that will come into consideration that will, of course, affect the whole format. You know, how much we travel, how much the galleries travel, you know, artworks move from one place to another for 5 days. So I think there's a lot of thinking to do about the future of Art First that I'm sure Georgina has some ideas, and everybody has, yes. Yeah, well, actually, I think COVID has started to solve this situation for us, because, you know, most kind of lots of art fairs had to. Can you hear us? Yeah, but Georgina, I think, raised her hand related. Oh, sorry, I didn't see her. Sorry, Georgina.
Sorry, that's okay. I just wanted to add on to and absolutely support Carlos. We haven't talked about the environment.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is terribly important. And I think a younger generation who will be our buyers, perhaps not immediately, the millennials, are very concerned by this, and absolutely what Carlos said about shipping all of this works half across the world and then shipping people half across the world to see them and then come back and see them in another art fair. That is going to change, and rightly so.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just a quick comment. I totally agree, and it's something that we are aware, and that also this moment, this pandemic moment, allow us to think also in this or within these aspects, no? And for example, what we are one little thing we are trying for the next edition is to create these collaborations between Mexican galleries and international galleries, and then maybe they can share a booth, and the Mexican gallery is here, and they are working with a Mexican artist, and the international gallery maybe don't have to send anything and even travel. And these are like little details that if we are aware of them, we can start working in a different way, no? Yes, exactly. And yeah, that's what I was starting to say, that kind of this COVID situation started to solve this situation and started this online thing for us, I think, which will probably not go away just because the pandemic will come to an end, if it comes to an end. Lots of art fairs had to be cancelled, postponed this year, but there came solutions. For example, Art Joburg, Mandla, you decided to go online this year, while others like us, Art Market Budapest, opted for a hybrid solution, so having an online art fair while doing it in person as well. So I think it's changing, and it's going to keep on changing. And I think it's very important to talk about the experience so far. We don't have much experience though, but I think maybe we can discuss your opinion about art sales happening online, art fairs going online. Do you have any experience about that? Can you tell us how people relate to that? Well, Attila, can you hear us now? Are you here?
I'm back. Well, there's no global answer to that. As Mandla pointed out, for them to be able to go online, the problem they had to face is that their community has a lower level of confidence in selling or buying online. So there's no global answer to that. It depends on a lot of local circumstances and factors. What we are experiencing is that and this is what we are actually focusing on with our online presence, is that over the past 10 years, Art Market Budapest has created a community of audience and a community of exhibitors. And one of the things that we're currently using our online presence for is to be able to keep this community together. Because those who physically cannot be with us, no matter how much they would love to, this way they can, remain part of the community, even if they're not here physically. The other thing, what the online presence seems to be a very good tool at, is to reach out to new exhibitors and new audiences. The ones who, they've been considering coming or visiting or paying more attention. Now that it's easier to create that connection, they actually do it. And they can test, how it feels working with us, what the benefits are. It creates a little more openness from, from that side. And this is and quite a few of our online exhibitors, they already, and many of our guests in our Inside Art conference, they already indicated their will and hope that they're going to be able to be with us physically next year. So these are two areas where the online presence is particularly useful. I don't feel that it will, in the short term, be able to replace actual in-person buying. The numbers don't show that. Back to what Juan said, which is a very important point. There's beauty in regionality, but the beauty of globality when it comes to specific galleries is that these galleries have portfolios that are cross-continental. We have an exhibitor from Korea, for example, presenting their German artist. So in that sense, we can remain global. And when it comes to a situation like the current one is, a global player or a player in Asia, Africa, or America can actually maintain its presence by inviting that part of their artistic portfolio that makes more sense in a given situation. So in that sense, what Juan raised is actually is a tool that normally many of the exhibitors never used before, but they're learning to use it. They're here, Korea is here with the German artist. Some of our international exhibitors made an effort to include a Hungarian or Central European artist in their portfolio to be able to be physically present at the fair.
Yeah.
Which again is a very positive outcome of the current terrific or horrific situation. And I'm not saying it simply because I'm a born optimist.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Georgina. Yeah, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, just on the subject of online sales, the OVRs, the online viewing rooms. Yeah. From what I gather, the anecdotal evidence is that sales are not at all at the level they would be in a physical fair. But I do think one advantage is that it has actually contributed to more price transparency.
Yeah.
Because prices tend to be put on OVRs. And that actually, I think, is very positive, because I think a lot of buyers they don't want to ask prices in a booth. They'll feel humiliated if it's something they can't afford. So actually, the price transparency, I think, is definitely a positive side of these online viewing rooms, which quite frankly are a bit of a soul-destroying thing to do, because, you know, clicking on your computer past on and on and on is not a particularly exciting experience. It doesn't replace the art fair. But, you know, there are some good things that come out of it. The other thing I would say, though, about online, I was talking to a young gallerist here in London just the other day, and online works for an artist who's got some sort of reputation, you know, some sort of institutional validation, who's perhaps been in some biennales and so on. But she's got a very young emerging artist, and she has great difficulty. People aren't really discovering new artists through the online platforms, in her case anyway.
Yeah, that's very good to know. Exactly. Well, we only have time for one last question, and this question I would like to ask for all of you to answer, if possible. It's a kind of a visionary question, but I think it's very interesting to hear your thoughts on that. So, what is your vision on a successful art fair, or like a successful art fair? Let's say in 10 years' time. In what way should it be different? Would it be different? How can you imagine that? Yeah, please, Georgina, just your.
I was rather hoping to listen to everyone else's opinions, but we'll go first. Yes, 10 years is a long time at the moment, and there are so many things that we can't really figure out. I think there will be fewer art fairs. Mm-hmm. I think that traveling will come back very slowly. So I think art fairs will be more local. But I think that they'll all be much more hybrid. I think just people won't travel so much. So there will be a bigger hybrid element, even if the pandemic is finished, even if they find a vaccine. Visiting the fair with somebody who like Art Basel do, you visit the fair online with somebody taking you around. I think that will take more space, and I think that's very good. But asking anybody at this point to look 10 years ahead it's a big ask.
Okay.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to think in tomorrow.
Exactly.
What about you, Juan? What do you think? In 10 years?
I totally agree with Georgina. I think the first will be smaller, will be more focused in the regional. At the same time, I think we should keep an eye on this international and global scenario and how we engage with it from these regions. I think we should find ways of being more sustainable in a different way. And this is what we were speaking before, and I think Carlos was mentioning about how a fair can survive and how the fair can survive with the galleries, trying to imagine other ways of being funded, of getting resources, how we can collaborate with other kind of projects. Can we imagine looking for some residencies for artists and will participate later in the fair, for example? I don't know. It's not easy, for example, in a place as Mexico, where the government has any intention of support arts right now, but I think it's something that we should think about and be imaginative, as I said. And then also, I think the format of the event and of the gathering will change. The space, the place, how we engage there, how many people, what kind of people. The question of the public is very important, because now, how many people we can go in a venue with the virus going around? It's much less, right? Who is these people who is coming? The galleries want the collectors there, but at the same time, as Mandla was saying and Carlos was saying, the importance of an art fair regarding the general public, education, discussions, thinking is also there. And in the last years, the art fairs has become also like this thinking tools, inviting thinkers, curators, directors to discuss different things. So I think all these things has to be there in a different way that, of course, I don't know how will be in 10 years.
Okay, I hope it's like that. Okay, Mandla,
Sure.
how do you imagine your own art fair in 10 years, Art Joburg?
Well, it's quite difficult to think in 10 years, but I do think 10 years from now, I would like to imagine an Art Joburg that has contributed towards building a sort of a stronger collector base, you know. When I say a stronger collector base, I want a diversified collector base because, as I mentioned, in South Africa, historically, white South Africans have collected art. And in the Black community, there's always this assumption that almost all white people were collecting art, but it's not true. There's still a lot of white South Africans who are not collecting art. So it is, I hope that I can contribute, or we could use the platform to getting sort of the generation of just under 40s who will probably be 50 at the time, or even younger, white and Black, who will be buying artworks and supporting a local ecosystem, because there's been talking to quite a lot of the African artists who are successful. Their concern was that not enough Africans were actually buying their work, that the first time they made it, their work were collected by Europeans and Americans, and I think that needs to change. The success, the local market needs to find a way of supporting them. It is changing with the art fair. I've seen that there's been quite a lot of artists who are now collected by local collectors, which is really exciting and fantastic. And but at the same time, I think the art world must not be looking forward to the old ways. You know, we mustn't be so quick to think that we're just gonna go back to the normal ways of working. I think we should really reflect and use this moment to saying, how can we make a positive contribution? I have found art fairs again to have become just another platform where there's just so many, it's the same work, it's the same conversation, and there's a lot of egos, and you know, to such an extent that it's almost impossible to collaborate. Like going to an art fair in Brazil, they'll probably look at me like, what the hell? You're not irrelevant to our ecosystem. Why should we bother talking to you? But I do think that, I hope that COVID has taught us that we can collaborate a lot more. It doesn't have to be commercial. In fact, art fairs need to rethink how they work, and the commercial part, I think, has gotten us also caught up on the money side only. There are things that excite me, like sharing content with art fairs, that I don't have to rely on a gallery in Mexico to try and push for content to be shown in this part of the world. And the same, I think it's something that could be led by an art fair as an initiative to saying, look, let's get this really prominent artist in Mexico to collaborate in Johannesburg, and how we can really break these divides, these cultural divides that do exist anywhere in the world, and we just pretend like they don't exist, but they do. And the same thing, and I think art fair owners and art fair directors really have to elevate themselves this time around and think around, how can we contribute? Because the education component for me is far much more important in any case than the commercial transactions.
Yeah, it's a beautiful concept. Thank you. Carlos, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I quite agree with what Mandla and Georgina and Juan said. And I think I said during this talk, I don't run an art fair anymore, so I can be daring. The future of art fairs, the art fairs that will survive will be linked to the community, environmentally conscious, sustainable, affordable, focused, and run by nice people, as Mandla was saying. You know? I think as you all are, and I think in the 2000s, the firm was copying the luxury brand model, and I think from now on they should more look into the hippie communities model in order to make it fun. And because, you know, you don't want to go to another luxury thing no, we want something exciting and cool and different and yeah, crazy.
Ah, let's do it in a crazy way. Yeah, these are nice closing words. Attila, you are very much affected with Art Market Budapest. Where would you would like to have your fair to be in 10 years? How will it look like?
I know exactly what it's going to be like 10 years from now, but I'm not going to let you know.
Oh, that's not fair.
Seriously, as we've summarized over the past over 1 hour, art fairs serve so many different purposes. Sales, business, education, community building, sustainability. I think all these different elements are going to be there 10 years from now. Maybe the emphasis is going to be slightly different or very different. But the basic purposes, I think the basic purposes are going to remain. And it will continue to be a platform that's important for educational purposes, for community building. And one of the conclusions we seem to have come to is that we will play a more important role in bringing our local and regional treasures to the public. Because that's one thing, and this is what we're learning this year with Art Market Budapest, and this is what we're learning right now, is that we have always been focusing on all 5 continents of the world, and now that we're figuring out that there are amazing things that are at our hands in the 100 kilometers away, which we never, which we never took a closer look at, and that will further strengthen the importance of what we currently call regional art fairs. So that I think again is a very positive element, because we're going to be able to dig deeper and find things that are currently not available and not visible. So we on that basis we may end up with more fairs, more local fairs. And then we will see who turns out to be more attractive for a more regional or global audience. But in that sense, all the different components I believe are going to be there. But the emphasis will probably change, and locality and regionality, and a deeper digging for treasures is going to be more present than it has been in the past 10, 50 years.
Well, thank you all. I'm really happy that we could conclude this.
One more thing. And normally our conference is here in person. So I'm inviting all of you to physically be here. We can reproduce the panel when this whole thing is over. Yeah. Or we can redo it 5 years from now and see, how far we've gone into those 10 years.
Yeah, with the predictions. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Or feel free to travel. Come next year.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Attila.
Unfortunately, we really have to round it up here because there's another panel discussion coming up. So, and I'm also pretty sure that you're all very busy. So thank you so much, Georgina, Carlos, Juan, Mandla, and Attila. Thank you for taking your time and sharing your very valuable thoughts with us. It was very interesting for me and very exciting. I hope the audience enjoyed it as well. Also, I would like to thank our audience for watching it. And please stay tuned for further Inside Art programs. You can check them on Inside Art website and on Art Market Budapest Facebook page. There will be a lot of exciting programs to come in the following days.